Well, this is the 2016 Leadership Wall Chapel, where you are going to hear about the 4 nominees for this year. The speakers for today's chapel are Ben Foster, Ben Adams, Charlie Hill, Aidan Lannon, Neil Yapuri, Sham Matakuri, Boba Bila, Sam Blumenthal, Hank Vig, Julian Gerstel, and Tai-Ting Zhou. And the speakers are going to give you some really interesting facts about each candidate. And they'll tell you why they feel their candidate should be the next person to be placed on the leadership wall in our lobby. As an audience member, your job is to listen really carefully. In a democracy, every vote counts. And you can only do your best if you are an informed voter. Informed voters know important information and facts about all the candidates who are nominated in an election. So listen really carefully to learn about each candidate. Let's begin, and please help me welcome our speakers.
Mother Teresa. Don't wait for leaders. Do it alone, person to person. It may seem strange to hear these words of Mother Teresa today because we're in chapel to select a leader for the leadership wall. After you learn more about Mother Teresa, we hope you will agree she inspired others, led by example, and lived a humble life of service. Even with all the traits that make her a great leader, we think what's so amazing about her is how she viewed herself. She never saw herself as a leader, but by her acts of service and love, she became one of the greatest leaders who served the poor without thinking of herself. Great leaders inspire others. Mother Teresa did that by living a life others want to imitate. Mother Teresa dedicated her life to helping the poor. She opened many different homes for the poor and homeless. She opened children's homes for orphans. She also opened a leper colony, which is for people with a disease called leprosy. This is a very contagious skin disease. When you have this, others don't want to be around you. Mother Teresa not only wanted to be around these people, but she loved them without fear. Because of her work, others from around the world followed in her footsteps. It is believed that over 610 centers for the poor, homeless, and orphans in 123 countries were opened because of her.
She never took personal credit for her accomplishments. She said it was God's work and I was just the tool to make it happen. We think that's pretty inspiring because it's rare to come upon someone who's that selfless. A lot of people help others for recognition, but Mother Teresa did it out of her love and calling to serve others. Great leaders don't give up easily. They actually persevere even when things get difficult. God doesn't require us to succeed. He only requires that you try. These words are why we believe Mother Teresa shines as an example of persistence. First, she joined a religious order of nuns called the Sisters of Loreto, but later she felt called to something greater. Leaving this order was very hard and not an acceptable thing to do, but she felt called to join the Missionaries of Charity. She asked for permission and was initially turned down. She prayed about it, kept trying, and eventually was granted permission by her superiors. She was persistent because she believed that this calling was God's will. She saw that Christ loved the souls of the poor, and so she did too. During some of her most difficult work, she became very sick, but she never stopped working to help the poor. Sometimes the sickness she had was from the sick people she was taking care of, but she still kept on working to help the poor no matter what it took. Mother Teresa has always shown persistence and has always been an example of persistence to people all around the world.
Leaders are humble. We feel that Mother Teresa has always been a symbol of humility, but the story of her Nobel Peace Prize is probably not like any story you've ever heard. In 1979, Mother Teresa became the sixth woman to win a Nobel Peace Prize. As some of you might know, a large banquet is held in honor of the winners. The prize is worth $1 million. Mother Teresa decided not to attend the banquet and asked the committee to donate the money to her charities for the poor. She didn't need or want the recognition of such a ceremony, but once again thought of the people she served before herself. Once, when interviewed by a reporter, she said the next leader of her group will be even greater than herself. So you can see, great leaders like Mother Teresa are always humble. The stories we shared, and especially the words we shared, show why we think Mother Teresa should be added to the leadership wall. She was a leader who inspired others, never stopped working to help people in need, and most importantly, showed humility in every situation. Mother Teresa is currently being considered for sainthood by the Catholic Church. As we close, we wanted to share our favorite quote from Mother Teresa with you. She once said, "Spread love everywhere you go. Let no one ever come to you without leaving happier." Now, we ask that as you leave chapel today, you will share a smile and think of Mother Teresa, a leader who showed the world how to love. And remember, Mother T is worthy.
Florence Nightingale was born in Florence, Italy, and she became a beautiful, brave, and smart woman. Florence was born on May 12, 1820. Florence grew up in a very large home that was so large it even had a name. But back then, that's what people in England did. Her house was named Embley Park and was located in Hampshire, England. Florence's father believed that his daughters should learn to read and study mathematics. He also thought that they should learn several languages like French or Italian. Florence's mother thought that her daughters should learn how to play an instrument, attend parties, have parties, and have very, very good manners. Florence loved learning, but she also loved helping other people, especially when they were ill. Florence's mother did not want her daughter to take care of ill people. She said this was not what her daughter should do. Florence said that she felt that she was called by God to help others. She was blessed with the ability to motivate people to help in serious situations and to organize people so they could do the most good for others in need.
Florence the nurse. She was unstoppable. She began reading everything that had been written about nursing, volunteering in hospitals, and visiting a nursing institution in Germany several times for training. During her training, she noticed that some of the ways sick patients were being treated didn't work, and the patients usually got worse. She had more success with patients when they were kept clean, warm, rested, and given good food. She was hired as a nursing supervisor in a hospital for women. Florence believed that all people deserved to have access to the hospital, and she would only take the nursing job if women of different religious beliefs were allowed in the hospital. She was also not paid for this task. However, she was able to do a wonderful job for the hospital and was even able to lower the cost of taking care of the patients. Florence was 34 years old, and she didn't know that her hardest job was about to begin. England had gone to war with Russia, and the wounded soldiers needed nurses. The War Secretary asked Florence to get nurses and travel to Turkey. She brought 37 nurses with her, and they began to help the soldiers. What a mess! The hospital was actually built on top of a sewer. 18,000 men were lying in the hallways of the massive hospital. Florence and the nurses went to work. The nurses were busy washing bandages, bathing the soldiers, cleaning their wounds, and feeding them food that was easily digested. Florence always used clean water. Florence was an organizer who made so many rounds, checking and caring for the men even during the night, that the men nicknamed her the Lady with the Lamp. Everyone loved and respected the hard work that Florence and the nurses had done, and 10 years later they established the first school for nurses.
Florence the researcher. Sometimes being a nurse wasn't easy. Florence contracted Crimean fever and would be sick off and on for the rest of her life. She was sick for 12 days, but returned to the military hospital in Turkey to work until the end of the war. After the war, Florence met with Queen Victoria and Prince Albert and told them about the conditions of the hospitals and her ideas for improving them. She wrote many papers about how to improve hospital care for people, and her research and statistics were respected and used by the United States and India. Florence helped everyone understand that hospitals had to be kept sanitary. Florence felt strongly about one habit that everyone must do when they were caring for the sick. Wash your hands. This is still advice that is still as important today as it was in Florence Nightingale's day. Florence Nightingale continued to write and research how nursing practices could improve and how taking care of the sick could be a beautiful and rewarding profession. She helped make nursing a profession that takes pride in caring for others. Florence did not want to wear pretty dresses and attend parties. Instead, she wanted to help others. Florence lit up our world with her lamp. Light up your lamp and vote for Florence Nightingale to have a place on the leadership wall.
Helen Keller. The class of 2026 is nominating Helen Keller for the Leadership Wall. Helen Keller was an amazing woman, and I'd like to tell you more about her. Helen Keller was born on June 27, 1880 in Tuscumbia, Alabama. When Helen Keller was only 19 months old, she came down with an undiagnosed illness, possibly scarlet fever. When she had recovered from being ill, she had lost her sight, hearing, and speech for many years. At her parents' request, Alexander Graham Bell, who was working with deaf children at the time, examined Helen when she was 6 years old. 20-year-old Anne Sullivan was a recent graduate of the Perkins Institute. Bell introduced Helen to Anne Sullivan, and this began a lifelong relationship between the two women. Anne Sullivan was an incredible teacher. Under Sullivan's guidance, Helen learned how to feel objects and associate them with words, spelled out by finger signals on her palm.
She went on to learn to read sentences by feeling raised words on a chalkboard. She even eventually learned how to speak. At age 14, Helen enrolled in Wright Humason School for the Deaf. At age 16, she entered the Cambridge School for Young Ladies. And finally, at age 18, she entered college at Radcliffe College. Not only did she graduate, but she graduated with honors and became the first blind and deaf person to win a Bachelor of Arts degree. She became an author and wrote many articles. She also wrote of her life in many books and won the famous Pulitzer Prize for her autobiography, The Miracle Worker. In 1920, Helen Hope founded the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU. Helen visited soldiers in World War II and earned the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Helen went on to live a long and productive life until her death in 1968. We believe Helen Keller should be on the leadership wall because she displayed the leadership qualities of courage, determination, and perseverance. Even though she was locked in her own dark and silent world, she had the courage and determination to allow others to help her learn how to communicate.
In doing so, it unlocked the prison she was trapped in. Helen Keller showed perseverance by not giving up despite her disabilities. You know how hard it is to learn certain things. Now imagine learning those same things without hearing someone explain it to you or being able to see how it is done. Well, that's how hard it was for Helen, and she never quit. But you may ask, how does this apply to me? We'll tell you. Helen Keller teaches us that people with disabilities are as capable as you and me. Also, we shouldn't allow what we see as our own disabilities to stop us from doing great things. Finally, Helen Keller teaches us to think of others. After she broke out of her world, she became an advocate for the blind and deaf. We too can make this a better world by using what we learned to help other people. Thanks for listening.
Clara Barton, first grade's nominee for the Leadership Wall. Clara Barton was a small woman, yet she made a big difference in many lives. By the time of her death in 1912, Clara Barton had begun a revolution that led to the right for women to do responsible work for society. As a nurse, she cared for thousands of wounded soldiers. She volunteered in the International Red Cross and later began the American Red Cross. Today, her work continues to be important to thousands of people in trouble. The first grade is proud to nominate Clara Barton for our lower school leadership wall. She spent her life caring for others, and we believe she deserves to be honored for her many achievements.
When Clara Barton was born on Christmas Day in 1821, when she was only 11 years old, one of her brothers was seriously injured. It was then that Clara began her life caring for the sick. For 2 years, she took care of her brother until he was healed. Most 11-year-old girls would have found the job impossible, but Clara felt a great need to help, and she was good at it.
When Clara grew up, she knew she wanted to work. She decided to teach school and soon became an extremely popular and respected teacher. At the time, there were only private schools that cost money to attend. Clara thought this was an injustice for poor students. The school board didn't think a woman should run a school, but Clara started a free school that was open to anyone. She even offered to teach for free to help the school get started, and the school quickly attracted hundreds of students.
When the Civil War broke out in 1861, Washington, D.C. was right in the middle of the conflict, and wounded men poured into the city. Clara immediately decided to help. She started organizing medical supplies for hospitals. However, many of the soldiers were so badly hurt that they couldn't make it to the hospital. They needed the hospital to come to them. Clara wrote to the government asking permission to go to the battlefield. The idea of women on the front lines was unheard of, but she wouldn't give up. Finally, she was given permission to go.
It was in the field hospitals where Clara found her calling. She braved gunfire to care for injured soldiers. She went without sleep and was even injured herself, but she never left her post. Soldiers called her the angel of the battlefield.
After the war, Clara was exhausted, and she went to Europe to rest. She met with one group of leaders in charge of the International Red Cross, an organization which helped care for wounded and displaced people during wars. The idea excited Clara, and she immediately joined volunteers caring for the soldiers in France and Germany. She promised to start a similar Red Cross when she returned to the United States.
In 1881, Clara founded the American Red Cross and was its first president. The United States was in a period of peace, but Clara made sure the organization stocked food, tents, clothing, money, and medicine ahead of time so it wouldn't have to scramble for supplies in an emergency. When the time came, she led volunteers into disaster zones, including helping people left homeless by wildfires or flooding. This was in the early days, before people learned the importance of the Red Cross. Now our entire nation admires it.
Clara's work with the American Red Cross was the start of modern humanitarian aid. Humanitarian aid is helping people in need. She expanded the role of the Red Cross to include natural disasters as well as war. Today, the Red Cross is often the first organization on the scene after a hurricane, earthquake, or flood. They set up field hospitals to care for people who are hurt and sick. They organize donations and distribute food, clothing, clean water, and medicine.
Clara Barton believed that all people deserve health and dignity. Throughout her long and busy life, she showed how to care for others when they need it most. Clara Barton made a difference, and isn't that what a good leader is supposed to do? I hope you will consider voting for Clara Barton for a lower school leadership law.
Thank you to our speakers. I think that you guys made wonderful choices for the nominees, and then the speakers really prepared well so that they could represent all of you very nicely. Now, you have some important information about each of the 4 nominees. And each of these women demonstrated strong leadership by doing many good deeds and by striving to make the world a better place for people who needed their help. Each of these ladies also fostered organizations of people who would continue to work after she was gone. You now have a day and a half to reflect on the candidates. If you want to learn more, Mrs. Kincaid has books available in the library, And you can also look online to find out more if you would like to check anything about any of these candidates. We will vote on Friday. Now, voting is a really private business, and it's up to you if you want to share who you are going to vote for or who you actually voted for after we're finished. You'll get a ballot, and it looks like this, and it has 4 names on it, and there's a circle in front of each name. To register your vote, you color in the circle in the front of the candidate's name, and that will indicate the person you want to vote for. And that's actually just how your parents vote when they go to vote as well, so it will help you to learn how to do that. Please vote for just one person, the person you think is the best leader. And remember, real voting's not a popularity contest. Informed voters choose the person who has been or will be the strongest and most effective leader. So thank you so much for being such an attentive audience, and the Leadership Chapel is now closed.